In 2010, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi all tied up their boots and headed to South Africa to battle it out for the #1 prize in soccer, in world soccer, for the World Cup. The warm smiles of the people of South Africa and the piercing shrieks of the vuvuzela marked not only the beginning of the World Cup, but a turning point in the way that Africa is perceived on the world stage. It's said that Africa has the ability to host major sporting events, that Africa is welcoming the world to play. Now, the economic advantages of major sporting events have been well documented, and the jury is still out on whether it was worth all the time, the effort, the energy, and the money for South Africa to host the World Cup 2010. Our next guest has the job of going around the world, convincing the world to cities and states to host the biggest sporting event in the world. So please, so that we can continue to the next segment, please put your hands together for the member of the IOC, Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's get straight to it. You're a money man. Your job, as I said, is to go around the world to cities and states and convince them that the Olympics should be hosted there. First of all, tell me in a nutshell how you do that, and then tell me how it's going.
Well, so far, historically, we've never had much trouble in convincing cities and countries to bid for the games, that the games were good for them. But today, the world has changed. The world has changed for many things, in many aspects, and this is not different. The situation today is that we need to do an extra effort in the International Olympic Committee to communicate that the games can be good and are actually good for the different cities. And this is one of our responsibilities, and we go after it.
Now, the stories of cities that have spent millions, hundreds of millions, and even billions of dollars and had to spend many years to pay it back are well documented. What comes to mind is the biggest example of that. 1976, the Montreal Olympics was supposed to cost $310 million US, ended up spending $2 billion and taking 30 years to pay it off. That scared a lot of countries and a lot of cities away. I mean, you got past that stage, but now it seems like you're in a new era where your narrative to these city-states has to change. How has it changed? How is your criteria towards what it takes to host a major Olympics? How has that changed recently, and why?
Well, we historically, the IOC, we would enjoy and we would really feel blessed when cities would offer to do an extraordinary compromise, to build incredible infrastructure, and to leave a very long-lasting and impressive legacy. Not anymore. Not anymore. That has changed from being impressed about that situation to live with that situation to what is coming now and will be approved by the session of the International Olympic Committee this coming December in Monte Carlo, which is, we want to walk away precisely from that. We need to take the games universally. We need to take the games to more countries, to more territories, to Africa eventually, and we'll discuss about that in a minute. And to do that, we need to be helpful. We need to make it easier and less cumbersome for cities, countries, and continents to bid. So we are really fighting our way towards that objective.
I mean, when we spoke earlier back there about this segment, when we did a little chat, you used the term that when it came to the criteria that there was no more monuments to wasteful spending. I think that was your very term. What did you mean by that?
Well, we call it white elephants. We have very good examples of games that have done extraordinary things for the cities. London 2012 is going to be one of them, but Barcelona 92 is certainly one of the most important examples. But we have examples of the contrary. We have Athens. Athens did the games in 2004, and all that money that is badly needed today for many other things in the country was just thrown away in that lavishing stadia and infrastructure, and that has not been used. So we have examples in both ways, and we are going to make sure that for the good of the Olympic movement, the Olympic ideals, and all the good things it represents, that will not happen again.
When you're going to states, as you're changing, it seems like within the IOC and the Olympic Committee that you're having a very rapid evolution in the way you articulate the benefits, the cost benefits to hosting the Olympics. When you're going to different states, are you plugging into how they see themselves in the future? We heard about Dubai 2020. Right. As a nation, especially when you're talking about developing nations and you're talking about, say, Africa, which we'll come to in a second, are you plugging into the sustainability, the job creation in a different way than you would, say, back in 1976 when you hosted the Olympics in Montreal?
Well, we are right now, in 76 is a long time ago. That was a very, very difficult moment for the Olympic movement. Bear in mind that as a consequence of 76 crisis, we had only one candidate for the Games in 84.
Los Angeles.
And that was Los Angeles. But since Los Angeles, all editions of the Olympic Games have made money. But that's another story. No, we will make sure that the things are going the right direction. We do not want that the Olympic project in a city, in a territory, becomes an isolated, very nice thing to have, and independent from the rest of the necessities of development of that particular territory. The Games have to be part of the long-term development plan of a city, of a country, and it has to be, the important thing has to be the development plan, and we can help, we can be the catalyst to get all that investment done, but it's not you do Olympics or you do hospitals. That is not the case, has not been the case for a long time, and will never be the case. If you do the Olympic Games, you could use the Olympic Games to really concentrate the investment, but in an already existing, sense-making, long-term development plan.
And how do you help potential candidates, contenders, to manage the budgets, and also to develop a plan for the legacy infrastructure that's left behind once the Games have left town?
Well, we do, contrary to what many people might perceive, we, the International Olympic Committee, we do not get money out of the organization or the country organizing. We actually contribute almost half of the Olympic budget in any given edition of the Games. We paid, the International Olympic Committee paid London for the Games around $1.3 billion. Same amount, very likely, very similar for Beijing. And it will be even a little higher now for the Games coming in 2016 in Rio. So we contribute first financially. We own the TV rights. We have the international sponsors. 50% of those income, of all that income, goes to the organizing committees. The thing is, the mistake or the confusion is that there are two budgets in every edition of the Games. One is organizing the Games. Let me tell you, Summer Games, $3 billion. It's more or less, could be 3.2, 2.8, but it's around $3 billion. We, the IOC, contribute to that budget to start with 1.5, so it's almost 50%. The confusion comes when they say Sochi, President Putin, he spent $50 billion in the Games. And it's true, but it's not in the Games. There is the infrastructure budget. We do the Games with $3 billion. If the given country or city, they want to use the Games for a big development project like London did in a significant part of the city, like Barcelona did, changing its fortunes for decades to come, or like Mr. President Putin did, creating a new whole resort in Sochi for summer and winter, that is something that has to be in the development plan, long term, and we can help, but we cannot be made responsible for that.
Okay, let's talk about Africa. This is a conference that looks at Dubai as the gateway between Africa and the Middle East, and certainly the Expo 2020 will have a lot of adrenaline pumped into that idea. what are the potentials for Africa to one day host the Olympics? Crystal ball gaze for me, even though it's a misty optic, be optimistic about the potential for Africa to host. What has to happen? And when you're going to African nations, what are you telling them they need to do? Because from my perspective, it seems like it's not just one step. Can I host the Olympics? And then it's a step-by-step process to get there.
Well, it's the first and most important thing that you need to organize the games is to want to organize the games. And I think that in Africa, that movement, that feeling, it's growing. And now that we've been, or we're going to be in Latin America for the first time, in Brazil, Africa is the last part of the world, the last continent where we need to organize the games. So we need first the desire from African citizens, from the African people to do the games. The second thing you need is that that the IOC wants to give it to Africa. And we do. President Thomas Bach, the new president of the IOC, recently in an interview, he was in Africa actually, he said very clearly that we will help and we will welcome any credible bid coming from Africa. So we will do our best, more than our best. We will turn ourselves backwards to try to help when we identify some credible initiative coming from Africa. And after that comes the hard reality. You need infrastructure, you need experience in sports organization, and that is a process that has to start slowly. You start doing an international event from the Cycling International Union, or you do the World Championship in boxing, or you do the World Championship, Junior World Swimming Championships. And you keep learning and building the experience and building the know-how.
And setting up the structures and
setting up the... Eventually, you might go for the Youth Olympic Games, easy to organize, low budget, and extraordinary school. You go for regional games, Pan-African Games, Mediterranean Games. And all that is a long process, but leads eventually to a credible bid that we would very, very much welcome.
Now, we heard from the managing director of Dubai Expo 2020 that the nation, her advice to African nations was, you've got to get your story right. Does that resonate with you as well?
Well, I mean, I participated in 3 consecutive bids of Madrid to organize the games and lost the 3. To Rio, to London, and now to Tokyo. When you bid, the thing you have in mind is, why? Why are these people going to vote for me? So you need to find a theme. I wish I had a theme as easy to sell as Africa. Africa is the future. Africa is our responsibility to help Africa continue to develop, to take its rightful place in the world. So Africa won't have a theme problem. Africa, the minute it's ready, they will get the games. Everybody wants the games in Africa.
Let's be more specific. Where in Africa?
I would say that it's difficult for me to say, but an obvious answer would be that today maybe South Africa could be the country better positioned to prepare for that kind of alternative. But there are other countries growing, as we've seen during the last 2 days, rapidly and in a very positive manner. So it could be South Africa, but it could come from countries such as Egypt and throughout the continent. It will be the case. You need infrastructure, you need the environment, you need the experience, you need the tranquility, the social and political tranquility. But I would say that in a 20-year period, there will be the possibility for a number of African nations to bid. And I'm not going to start pointing one against the other. It's not what I could do.
Okay, we're going to take questions from the audience. So if anybody has any specific questions, please raise your hands. I think the ladies with the microphones are hovering around here. Is there anyone that has a question on the Olympics and perhaps on big sporting events and the impact of that? No? Well, I'll ask a question then whilst you're thinking about that. Well, one thing I haven't asked you is, I mean, I spoke for you at the beginning about the advantages and disadvantages. We've not really talked about that. maybe from an African perspective, I mean, this is what you live, eat, and breathe, articulating what the Olympics is all about. I think your slogan is something along that line of bringing the world together with sport. I think I'm paraphrasing what the Olympic motto is. Spell that out for us. If an African nation eventually becomes the host of the Olympics, the biggest sporting stage on earth, what is the legacy? I mean, what's the advantage to doing that? What's the advantage of all the blood, sweat, tears, money, time, and effort that it takes to do that?
Well, there are two constituencies to consider. The first is how good the Olympic Games are for the host city. And you have examples like Barcelona that changed its history in 1992. The tourism, the industry, the infrastructure, the perception in the world. You have cities like London still starts now to see what has represented the 2012 Olympic Games. And you have others that have been a disaster. You talked about Montreal, and we talked about Athens, and there are others. So legacy-wise, it's a matter like everything in life. You have to do the things right. If you do the things right, being in the center stage of the world for that period of time would give you extraordinary fuel for growth, for positioning, for developing your country and developing the world's perception of who you are. And that is a lot of GDP points already. Now, the second constituency, it's us, the IOC. We need, of course, that the athletes will bring the athletes and they will perform. We'll produce the TV sign. Basically, we do our own television production. So we just need good light, enough energy, good athletes, reasonable stadium, and we can go along. I mean, we have 3 billion viewers normally in the Winter Olympic Games. So we just need very basic things. Who is here at risk is the organizer. If they do the things right, I repeat, and they put that as a part of an investment long-term program, that is a very, very important, can be a very important success. Otherwise, you're running big risks.
And I suppose one of the ways you're looking at it is you have to break a way of thinking, or you have to change the way of thinking, that it's not a case of build this road or build this hospital or have the Olympics, build this school or build this infrastructure that will benefit the people or have the Olympics. That it's, because that's kind of, I suppose that's the resistance you're facing. Are you struggling at the moment to find a host city?
Well, not really struggling, but what we are struggling is with the public perception in many basically Occidental cities from the West that the games are expensive and cost a lot of taxpayers' money. And it's absolutely not true. It's absolutely not true. The budget of organizing the Olympic Games has turned a moderate profit since 1984. Every time out, time in and out, every single time, again and again. The thing is that, but if you taking advantage of the games, you finally change the airport. Now, we had a presentation of Emirates president today. He said that they need longer runways in many cities. If you put a longer runway in an airport because the games are going, this is a good infrastructure for the city and stays there. If you need a new hospital for the doping control, that hospital is not to be empty after the games. It has to be embedded into the program of development of the city. We rather have the hospital, the theoretical hospital, instead of near the stadium, which is very comfortable to us. We would be happy that it's in the other part of town where it will serve the community. The stadiums, we like concentrated bits. But we hate the idea that those stadiums altogether are not going to be used more than once a year after we leave. So we rather have one stadium in one neighborhood, the other one in another one, the other one serving the schools, the swimming pool giving.
And you don't necessarily have to build a new structure, really. You could refurbish existing structures as well. You
come to us with a bid saying, and we will build a 25,000-seat swimming pool. We are horrorized. We run in fear. We rather have another more reasonable swimming pool, 3,000, 2,000 permanent seats, and build a temporary infrastructure for 15 more seats. We are all for temporary venues. We don't need generations to come to go and say, this Olympic Stadium. And Olympic stadiums have a bad history of not being used. Olympic stadiums are difficult to use for football because they have the track and field, the spectators are too far away. So we are very, very concentrated now in financing a significant part of the organization of the Games, giving all the support that we have. We even have something called Olympic Knowledge Transfer Services. So we package all we learn in one Games, we put it in luggages, and we take it to the next guys. So Africa could do it. Africa, I would say that it's a long period of time to organize the Games. They are awarded 7 years before the event itself. The race starts 2 years before that. I would say that a credible bid from Africa for 2032. It sounds very far away, but it's not so much. So that would be a reasonable thing to expect.
And Juan, so I can say that you're one of Africa's champions then, are you? So we have you in Africa's camp.
I think I'm certainly in Africa's camp. I witnessed a wonderful event in South Africa, as you mentioned, the World Cup. Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, that was not the important thing. The only important thing there was that Spain won.
Yes, that's all that really matters. Ladies and gentlemen, Juan Antonio Samaranch of the IOC, give him a warm round of applause, please. Thank you so much for that. Now, I would ask you to stay in your seat for the next session. Mr. Alaba is going to be welcomed any second now, and I think the moderator is somewhere around. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.